Make every night a wonderful journey, no matter where you are. Good night, sweet dreams. The first story, Seclusion. I awoke in what seems to be a small, square room, a simple enclosure for the simplest of people. All that I can see is a chair underneath a singular beam of light, establishing a dominating presence over this dark chamber of solitude. I have no idea where this room is, or how I got here. An irritating feeling of glitch infects me. Was this some poor attempt of a test, with me having the honor of being the lost soul in need of redemption for my sins? I scoffed at the thought. I hear dripping close to me, a low monotonous sound that softly infiltrates my eardrum as it hides in my tenebrous surroundings. I began searching the room for an exit. The first thing I would have to do is find a wall so that I can find a door. I began walking in one direction in hopes of running into the wall. I walked into the darkness, and I shouldn't have done that. Suddenly, I felt an extreme chill. It's colder than I've ever been in my entire life now, and I'm overcome with an amalgamation of sadness, hopelessness, and depression. I keep on walking, but each step increases my unrelenting agony. I suddenly see a familiar single-lit area and chair. I ran toward it and embraced its warmth. I panted vigorously, as if I had done a session of extreme exercise. I look at the chair next to me, its solid wood texture absorbing the warming light. I think of sitting down on it, but for some reason, I feel a menacing, or a being expelled from it, as if it doesn't want me to use it. I chuckled to myself for even beginning to believe that an inanimate object had a conscious mind, and one that didn't like me either. I still felt tired after entering the darkness, so I decided to lie upon the cold ground and sleep, under the light's protective glow. I awoke once more, and to my dismay, nothing had changed. The chair still sat, underneath the beam of light as I sat next to it. Never on the chair though. Never would I sit atop the chair. The chair doesn't like me and I don't like it. And that's how things will stay, as I clean my eyes of the mucus that comes with sleep. A sudden realization startles me. I haven't eaten since I first woke up. In this godforsaken room I have not felt the need for food, or the need for drink. It doesn't make any sense, but neither does anything else. Why am I here? Who's keeping me here? But the thing that plagues my mind every minute I spend here is why there is a chair here. It just sits there, deceptively inviting, watching my every movement, knowing full well I won't sit on it. I hate it. I spent the next few hours staring up into the beam of light. It bemused me. It did not come from a light bulb or a hole. From what I could see, it simply peered down from above, a beacon of hope in my time of need. I tried to be as optimistic as I can, but it's difficult for me. I have no family to think of, no lover I can hope to see again. I'm just as alone in my life as I am in this room or that one. Disgusting chair. I hate it. I still hear the dripping, no matter what way I turn my head. The dripping always comes from directly behind me, enticing me to follow it into the darkness. I've slept twice since I entered the darkness last time. The feeling of cold still lightly grasping me. Shivers are sent down my spine as I begin to think about the darkness. The feeling of panic, the lack of oxygen, it was too intense to bear. I can't face it again. I still wonder how the outside world looks, how I took the simple sight of everyday life for granted, what I would give to see the morning hustle and bustle of cars again, The smell, the nauseating fumes being released into the air and to my nostrils. A working man's nightmare is now my dream. I let out another chuckle. I begin to ponder just what I did to deserve this fate, being locked away from all society and civilization, with nothing but a beam of light and a horrible chair to keep me company. I hate the chair. I was never a bad person. I paid my bills. I worked for my money. Yet I am the one doomed to this room of shadows, until I eventually heal over and die. I wonder when that will happen. When will death decide to open its ancient arms and welcome me to his side at his fortress of flames? Most people would be scared of the thought of death and hell. But I'm not. I'm already there. This room is doing something to me. I've slept multiple times, and still I feel no need to drink or eat. Since awakening in this room, I've become immortal, a power sought after by millions. Yet this new-found power is not a blessing. No, it is a curse. And that's when I realized that this room is keeping me alive. It doesn't want me to leave, even with the surrounding mist of darkness that I fear. So heavily it knows that malnourishment would kill me, and thus I would be free. Death was my only escape, and this room took that away from me, and the chair knew it too. I despise the chair. Something's changed. I feel like I'm being watched now. The feeling of being watched is creeping upon me, crawling up my back and spreading throughout my body, tingling within my spine and onto my other bones. It is almost too overbearing to ignore. 'Tis certain. I looked behind me, but as always, there was nothing but pitch black darkness. There are no footsteps. There is no breathing. How could someone be there, watching me, staring at me, so intently that I cannot even hear them move the tiniest bit or take the smallest breath? It's near impossible. But the feeling never leaves me. The feeling is so certain, so very, very certain, so certain, that I close my eyes so tightly that I can only open them wide and simply stare. So certain that I began to hear the faintest of many voices whispering in my ears, in disfigurable languages and inaudible sentences, accompanied by a chilly breath upon my clammy skin. The hairs on my neck stood up, and I felt a shiver uncontrollably run up my spine. After that came the laughter. All I could hear was a quiet laughter that haunted me, every voice whispering, taunting me, the sound of laughter upon my ear. It breathes upon it so lightly, breath so subtle that I cannot ignore it. The darkness still surrounds me, and my throat feels dry, but I do not attempt to scream, as it would be futile. This room knows I'm its prisoner, and it is my warden. I wish I could hear that dripping again, that beautiful sound, but all I can hear are the whispers, the laughter, and my own heartbeat. The noises drove me mad for days. I've sat here alone and hating every second of it. But now that these inhabit my head, I couldn't wish for anything better than to be alone again. Just me, the beam of light, and the ever-looming darkness. I tried to make out some of the voices, but so far I've only managed to make out one word, one simple word that echoed through my mindset. Never before have I shuddered at the thought of a word before. The voices repeat it, over and over again, as I stare at the chair. The chair I feel so much hatred for. The chair that has mocked me since I first awoke here. Hours I stood there, looking at the chair, while the voices continuously tried to convince me to succumb to their whispers. Around me the darkness still lies dormant, watching me, as if anxiously awaiting my next move. Maybe the voices were trying to save me, and by sitting on the chair, I would be able to escape this room. There seemed to be no other way out. The darkness blocked all angles. What if nothing will happen? If I sit on the chair, and the voices are deceiving me in their sick humor? As the old adage goes, there is only one way to find out. I approached that of which I felt great contempt for, the man-made structure that holds evil within its layers of wood. I was mere inches away from it, the closest I had ever been. I could feel an aura of anger and disgust radiating from the lone furnishing. It didn't want me sitting on it, but the voices did. Was the chair protecting me, or were the voices? These questions and their answers flooded my mind as I eventually did the thing I promised myself I would never do as long as this room was my abode. I sat upon the chair. At first there was silence. The voices no longer whispered, and the laughing ceased. But my salvation did not come. No exit was uncovered whilst no life filled the room. I sat there for a few seconds, aghast at what has happened. Or what didn't happen. The voices had lied to me. I had done their bidding and to no avail. I was still trapped here, with nothing left. I was truly hopeless. It was at that moment that my greatest fear that I had of this place came to reality. The beam of light started shrinking. Inch by inch I saw my safe haven diminish, slowly being eaten by the shade that surrounded it. I knew exactly what would happen when the light ran out, what the darkness will do to me, however horrible the darkness made me feel as I invaded it. It could not kill me, it only had the power to make me feel hurt, agonizing, excruciating hurt. But it could not physically damage me, and it knew this killing me would allow me to be free of this prison, finally allowing me to rest my mind and soul. But it did not want that. It wanted me to suffer. As the impending darkness grew ever more imminent, I couldn't help but feel betrayed the voices that whispered so softly into my ears, posing as a savior to help me achieve freedom, had deceived me worse than anything else ever could. The beam of light that protected me from the harrowing darkness now turned its back on me, leaving me to fight alone, and finally the chair, the bane of my existence in this non-forgiving environment, playfully waited until I sat on it. The trigger that would set the darkness upon me. I will forever hate this chair. The darkness is nigh. I can longer see my feet up to my knees. This was the end for my seclusion. I was about to become one with the darkness, taking the place of the beam of light I grew to trust. This was my fate, my undeserving fate, but nevertheless I was doomed to accept it, and I did. I proudly put my head up high, welcoming the darkness into my arms like an old friend. As the darkness engulfed me, taking what was left of my sight, I felt a familiar chill creep itself onto my skin. My never-ending death had begun. The second story. I am not a clone. I am the original. I am the best. I care not what those journals say. They are wrong. Wrong, 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 wrong. I am the original, aren't I? I fingered the pokeballs attached around my waist. My POK, my partners, my faithful companions, my best friends. Through thick and thin, we'd gone through the perils of Johto and into Kanto. And now, here I was standing at the entrance to the old mansion. I had been mesmerized by the beauty of a Ninetales I had battled against on my way here. I wanted one. I had to have one. The kind trainer told me that VUL pics could be found in the old Cinnabar mansion, which was just about destroyed, dangerous, but I was getting that VUL pics whether this stupid mansion wanted me to or not. I double-checked my party, making sure everyone was set and ready to go. My feral IGATR, Bedrill, An octal, UMB rayon, and rapid ash all seemed ready, but there was the question of whether or not he was ready. I bit my lip, having been told by a friend of the journals that were scattered around the mansion. He had pointed out the connections to my dearest boy, and I, of course, denied every single thing he pointed out. I had to my POK mom were practically my children, and what parent would not try to protect their child? But even I couldn't ignore everything. I decided to just keep him in his pokeball for this trip, even if his psychic powers were good against the poison Pokemon that practically ruled the place. I took the ball and shoved it down deep in my backpack. I made sure I had plenty of potions, and tarots, and burn heals. After finding satisfaction in my stores, I slung the bag across my back and called out my Rapidash. I kindly asked her if she would light up the dark mansion for me, and the Pokemon WAtion needing flared brighter. I smiled and thanked her, guessing that this was a yes. And so, where are we? I can't tell it. As dark and stuffy it, as hot, too hot. I don't like it. Why can't I see this feeling? Why do I have it? Why do I suddenly feel so ice cold? Where are we? I felt the pokeball rattle in my backpack. Considering my bag was so loaded with stuff, I was surprised I could feel it. My boy must be distressed. I frowned. I knew he didn't like being in dark places, and yet I still did this to him. He'll be upset, but not as much as he would if he was out. The lesser of the two evils, I suppose, and I simply couldn't leave him in the storage system. He'd live. I slid my Pokédex out of my pocket, looking at the picture of the VUL pics on the screen. Studying it, I scanned over its info. I'd be ready to face this thing once I found it. I even had the brand new Ultra Balls in my pocket, ready to toss at the fucked VULLL. My gaze snapped up from the screen, my eyes wide. My prize had come to me, it seemed. Who was I to complain about that? The VUL pic spotted me with pinprick eyes. It took off down the decrepit hall, grinning. I readied Farron's pokeball and took off after it, my feet pounding on the moldy carpet. Like I feel sick. I have a headache. Is there anything for that? Maybe something for humans. Maybe it'd work for me too. I'm not too different from them. After all, no matter how much it pains me to say, the same with some of them in the world. Huh? We're moving? Or that sick feeling got stronger. The air smells familiar. Are we in a cave? No. It's not a cave. It feels too strange to be a cave. Let's see, there's mold in the air. The air smells stale. Rain closed somewhere. That's too dry to be a cave. The air isn't dusty. There is ash something. As burning or has recently burned. That explains the heat, I guess. But there's something behind all of it that's so familiar. It practically drills itself into my mind and into my fear, it seems. Where are we? Am I in the back? Is there something I shouldn't see? Why not? I'm strong enough to handle it. I'm strong enough to handle anything. I chased the VUL pics through the dark. All of a sudden, it took a sharp turn to the right, into a room rapid ashened. I rushed into the room, my partner's bright flames penetrating the shadows that lurked in every corner. It was almost eerie, now that I think about it. I turned to the far side of the room. The VUL Pix was trapped against the wall, hissing and spitting. I frowned. Water would just scare it more. I knew so. With a quick ember from my powerful Rapidash into flick of the wrist, VUL Pix was safely inside a Ultra Ball. I walked over and lifted the Pokeball, tucking into a pocket in my bag. I'd stick it in the PC once I got back outside. I slung my backpack off, reaching down one of the side pockets to grab an escape rope. That's when I saw it. The journal my friend had told me about. Why it was laying on the ground, as though someone had pitched the old book against the wall. Though I'd never know what was in that book. Though I had to know. My curiosity suddenly lurked in the front of my mind like my shadow on a sunny day. It was there was no getting rid of it. Even though I practically promised myself and my boy I wouldn't. I reached forward and pulled the book toward myself, being extremely careful with the yellowed pages. I bit my lip, gently turning to the front of the book. I read aloud, July 5, Guyana, South America. We have discovered a new species of Pokemon. It seems that all members of this species are now gone. Sadly, this makes studying the new Pokemon very hard. Luckily, we have recovered samples of the Pokemon's DNA. They appear to be very recent of these Pokemon only very recently gone extinct. Or are they actually still alive? Why does this sound so familiar? It's so painfully familiar. I can feel it in the back of my mind. Why can't I remember? I turned the page, surprised to find a few pages torn out. I turned to where the book was laying, finding scattered piles of tiny bits of torn paper. I frowned. There was no salvaging that. I sighed and continued to read. July 10, Guyana, South America. Due to its supposed kitten-like appearance, we have decided to christen the new Pokemon Mew. I smiled. Mew was a very cute name. Mew. The name is so easy to say it rolls off my tongue as easily as my own name. I can feel it burning in my mind. I know that name. Why do I know that name? I turned the next few pages, finding them torn out or simply destroyed to the point that only a few lines of text were readable. Finally, I came to something useful. February 6, Cinnabar, Kanto. The tests on the Mew have proved successful. We have cloned a brand new specimen, however. The limited DNA have will not work. Professor Blaine offered some of his own blood for the research. While the clone is not what we had hoped for, being very little like the original Mew, it will have to suffice. We have decided to call this creature Mutual. Mutual appears to be rather powerful. We don't, however, yet know the extent of this power. I frowned and bit my lip. My friend had lied to me. He hadn't wanted me to read these. He had pointed out small similarities that were painfully real. My Mutual was really a science experiment. No, remember now. I remember it all. Now. I don't remember this. Eerie refused to believe I am just a science experiment. I had emotions. I had thought. I had to suffice. I believed them. I believed those stupid humans. I believed they cared. I am as stupid them for believing their charade. They care nothing about life. I just had to suffice, though. I was almost shaking my poor Mutual. This was really what he was intended for. My bottom lip quivered. I choked back tears. My Mutual. What would have happened? Would he not escaped? What fate would he have come to If he was not with me now, I read on. I had to know what the end would have been if he didn't. September 1. Cinnabar. Canto. Mutuo is far too powerful. All attempts to weaken its vicious tendencies have failed. I flipped through the remaining pages, finding only blank paper. I threw the book against the wall and slung my backpack over my shoulder. I jumped on Rapid Ash's back, trusting her to take me to the entrance. I just had to get out. I remember now so vividly, but no matter how many times I run through it in my head, it just seems like a story. I am Mutuo. I am myself. I am no one's clone. I realize I'm pushing into my dear trainer's thoughts, but I don't care it better. If someone knows what I'm thinking, I have to get it out. I am the original. I am the best. I care not what the journals say. They are wrong. Wrong, 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 wrong. I am the original, aren't I? No matter how many times I say it, I can't convince myself it's true. The third story. Death shines like a candle. Do what? I think we're lost, Nina told her companion. They could hear the torrential rain and thunder outside, the same storm that knocked out the power in the entire celestial tower and the surrounding area. All Mina wants to do is to at least find the front door, so she can leave as soon as it clears up. She scolded herself for not bringing another source of light with her into the tower. There's nothing we can do but wait until morning, Mina mentioned, sitting down and leaning against what Mina hoped was the wall. Let's try and get some sleep. Did you? Duat answered, sitting down beside her. After numerous unsuccessful attempts to get some sleep, Mina just sat where she was, Addy petting her sleeping Duat and checking the time on her extrans every few minutes. That's when she noticed a purple flame nearby, like the flame of a candle, and it seemed to be moving towards her. Mina was instantly alert, her hand instinctively going to the poke balls attached to her waist. She didn't throw one. She wanted to be sure that whatever was had hostile intentions before attacking. As it came to where she was, she could see in its purple light that it was indeed a living candle. Litwick, it said, its eyes looking over Mina and Duat. Mina noticed, as it came close, that this POK was a light source, though not as bright as a light bulb. It was enough to lead them out, but only if it was willing. Hello, Mina said as kindly as possible. We got kind of lost in the darkness. Do you think you could help us by leading us to the door? Litwick, it answered, nodding. Mina woke up Duat, who was initially suspicious of the candle POK and was ready to attack. But after Mina told him that Litwick agreed to lead them out, he calmed down and allowed the candle to lead the way. Initially, Litwick used its light to make sure they took the right path and didn't trip, as well as leading them through the maze of gravestones to the stairs. But as they went, it became harder and harder, until both Mina and Duat were breathing heavily. After a bit more, Duat suddenly fainted. Litwick, come over here. I need your light to check on Duat. She called to the Litwick. It turned and came back, and Mina was able to see that he didn't just faint. It was more like his energy was sapped. Duat, can you hear me? Mina called, shaking him. Duat managed to weakly open his eyes halfway, and Mina breathed a sigh of relief, thinking that he would be okay. But he shook his head and said, Do. He closed his eyes again, as his body took a few more difficult breaths and laid still. Tears came to Mina's eyes. as she realized that her duot, her beloved P.O. came on that she had since Juniper gave him to her as a present, was dead. She picked up his body, intending to give him a proper burial come morning. After another floor, Mina fell to her knees. She struggled to stand, but it was as if her energy had left her, and she didn't have enough to even get to her feet. She looked at the lit wick she was following, which now had a sinister smile on its face. Mina gasped as she suddenly realized that the lit wick has been sapping her energy and was the reason Duat was dead. She brought a hand to her belt, intending to use one of her other PO came on, but Litwick jumped forward with surprising speed and knocked her on her back, scattering her poke balls everywhere. It sat on her chest, and the sinister yellow eyes would be the last thing she would see, as her remaining energy was sapped. Litwick stepped away from the now dead human. As it walked off, it stopped and looked back at her. It kind of liked her, and it was sorry it killed her, but it needed to eat as well, and the human was the closest thing around. It was full now, but there will be others that will get lost, and it will be there to feed again. Litwick, while shining a light and pretending to be a guide, it leeches off the life force of any who follow it.